chance to come on. The light's changing outside, as you can see. We're at sunset here in Los Angeles. Andrea and I are very close together, but physically distancing. You're about probably a mile from where we live, about a mile from each other.
We're alone together.
We're alone together, exactly. So I'll give people a few minutes to find their way on. Let's see if anyone's here yet. Oh, good. I see us here. So at least I know we're live. When you come on, say hello, please, folks. All right. And let us know where you're from when you come on. Hello, Lisa from Pennsylvania. She says hello to us both.
Hello.
I'm excited we're doing this, Andrea. Andrea and I have done things before, so we're collaborators many times in lots of different ways. Hey, Robin, glad you're on. Robin's in New York, I know. Karen, hi, Karen. Hi, Allison, Betty from Ohio. Welcome. Good to see everyone. All right. Allison's from Big Bear. Good.
Oh, nice. I've been there.
Dixie's from Ohio. Shirley's from Pennsylvania. Diana's here from Southern California. Lisa from Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome. Hi, Irene. Good to see you. Clarissa's here. She's from Lethbridge. Okay. Ottawa, Canada. Sharon from Texas. Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're all here. Nice to see everyone tonight. I'm so excited to introduce you, and many of you maybe already know Andrea Cagan. So for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, this is a pop-up group I've got that really was established because so many people in grief didn't have their physical group to go to. So I come on every day at 1 p.m. Pacific time and 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern. I pick a different topic every day. We talk about it, do some questions together. And then in the evening, I invite incredible people like Andrea on who have had certain kind of losses. We have that different times, or maybe they have different talents. Andrea is someone who's dealt with loss and has an interesting talent tonight about writing. And so we're going to be talking tonight about writing and journaling. So those usually happen around 5 or 6 p.m. depending on the day. And it's just really a way for us to connect and get you information. And even though we can't be physically together, we can certainly virtually hold each other's hands. So that's what we're doing here. Sandra's from Maryland. Paul says Andrea Cagan is wonderful. She certainly is. Allison from Bossier City, Louisiana. Hey, Debbie, Huntsville, Texas. Eunice from New York. Sharon, New Jersey. Bobby, Florida. Hey, Carla. Terry's Indiana. This is sort of if you're new, it's our romper room moment where you say hello and where you're from. But you don't have to. Some people are just watching the background style. As you'll learn from this, there is no right way to do anything. So we all get to do it differently. Michelle's here. Teresa's here. Great. So one of the traditions that I always like to do is to just take a moment. We're all here because someone we love has died. So if we could just take a moment of silence, close your eyes if you want, or just sit and just send them love wherever they are, knowing that we can still love them as much as if they were still physically here. It's certainly not the same, but we can still send them love. So let's take a moment. Thank you all so much for doing that.
Felt good.
So let me tell you who we have. So we have Andrea Cagan. If you don't know Andrea Cagan, you probably know some of her work. Andrea is an author, an amazing editor. She's edited some incredible books. She's edited books with Diana Ross, Marianne Williamson, Grace Slick, lots and lots of amazing books this woman has edited. She's also an author herself and has written some really wonderful books. And she has been my editor for many, many years.
Long time.
Just an honor to be with her. And writing is something that's been very important to me, obviously very important to you, Andrea.
It's been my life. Yep.
Right. It's interesting to talk about how that will play into grief. And I just want to share a story, not about Andrea's credentials, but who she is. After my son David died, in those next couple of months, people would check in or do things and all that. Andrea was over one day and she said to me, "If you're interested, I would be happy to go to your back office where I write and have you tell me the story of what happened with David so I could write it down so that you could have it and not lose those details."
Mm.
So sweet, so sweet. And just that idea that, she wasn't going, "Oh, let me get you a casserole." She was like,
she doesn't cook.
Right. But she was like, "You might want these details later. Let me help you get them down." And it was just a cathartic thing for me to do. So writing has been so, so important in my life and in grief. So Andrea is the master here. She has a writing class here in town. We know so many people in common. She's done so many amazing books. So we also were privileged that we did a whole online class together about writing through grief and trauma. And so this is something we both care about. So Andrea, I'd love for you just to share a little bit about either how you got into this or the writing piece or the writing and trauma, whatever you feel like you want to share to start us off.
Well, first I want to just say that I'm so happy to be here. During this particular time, the ability to offer something and to help people is just so important. And I love that David's made a space where that can happen. I've always written in my life. It was just kind of something I really loved to do. But I remembered an experience that I had. My father had died, and my mother was not particularly outgoing or emotional. She wasn't touchy-feely. She was very, very kind of stoic New England. And she wouldn't really talk about her relationship with my father. I couldn't get her to speak about it. And I tried to, just gently ask certain questions, and she didn't want to answer them. So I did something really unusual. I decided I was going to take some pen and paper, and I was going to write down how I thought they were together, what I thought their life was like, and the questions that she wouldn't answer. I kind of made them up. And it released me. It gave me some comfort because it felt like I was intuitively understanding who they were together, because they had a long relationship of 51 years, but she was just unavailable. And so I somehow found a place to put those feelings, and I wrote them. And I wrote before that, and I've been writing ever since. But I just want to say that anyone who's going through grief, immediate grief right now in the midst of this pandemic, has just got to be doing double duty with everything. And writing can be a really good outlet, as long as you don't care how it sounds or
right.
whether it's great or whether it's bad, or it's just to get the thoughts out. Like with David, I wanted him to talk to me about his son's death because there were details that he wouldn't remember as time went by. And that's what I encourage all of you to do also.
Right. Well, thank you, Andrea. I think writing is so helpful. We talk in this group about the importance of witness and grief.
Mm-hmm.
And writing is a place I can witness my own grief. If there's no one else there to witness it, I can at least witness it. And I'll just share a quick story, which I'm sure you've heard 100 times, Andrea.
That's okay.
But what it is that, I talk about brain terms a lot of times, how our brains work, and in grief and in other things. And I talk about things like confabulation. Confabulation is a story that our mind makes up many times to protect us. It makes up a story and we believe it. So the example is, if you would have met me, and many people know my mother had a horrible, isolating death when I was 13 years old in an ICU. And at the same time, there was a mass shooting. So it was just such a horrible experience. And if you would talk to me as a teenager or in my 20s, horrible victim. And I would have told you how my mom abandoned me. And I believe I had been abandoned. I was such a victim. Years later, probably in my 30s, I sat down to write. And I decided to not write my story, but to write their story. I wrote the story of my father. I had so much judgment on my father. He just didn't do well with grief. And I judged him for that. When I wrote the story about what's it like for him to have a wife dying, to have a son you couldn't parent, I went from judging him to having compassion for him. Then I went to write my mother's story. And when I wrote her story, for the first time, when I wrote her story, I saw on paper, my mother didn't abandon me. My mother died. Abandonment is what a child's mind makes up. And I could see in the writing that it happened differently. And it's always been so powerful for me. And I talked about in our class, James Pennebaker, University of Texas, did studies on people in grief and trauma about how writing helped them so much and how it lowered their blood pressure and their anxiety, that there's something powerful about writing through these hard moments, isn't there?
There really is. I thought of a really beautiful exercise that I've done, and that when a very good friend of mine died, I was really distraught. And somebody said to me, well, you still have a relationship with this person, and it could even get better. So I decided that I was going to write to this person, and then I was going to have this person answer me in the writing.
Right.
So I would write as me, and then I would write as him, and it relieved so much stress. I don't know why it does that, but it does. It's something
it's communication.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really had a sense that he was there and he was listening to me, and the answers and the things that he wrote back, I don't think I knew them particularly by myself.
Right.
So I think there's a way of embracing the person who's gone and still connecting with them and communicating with them and completing certain things that maybe we didn't complete when they were alive.
And I'm a firm believer, if you've got something to say sincerely in your heart, they will hear it in theirs.
I believe that too.
I believe that. I'd love for you to share one other story, because I just thought of it. People on here often deal with guilt, the what ifs, taking things on.
Yeah.
You have a story that I remember about giving someone a message.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us that
story. I was probably in my teens, young teens. And I was in a school that was a live-in school. I was in like a boarding school. It was a school for ballet because I was a ballet dancer. So I was there quite young.
You were a ballet dancer? You were an actress? I've actually seen one of your movies. You've had quite a lot.
Many lifetimes here.
Many lifetimes.
I was in the practice room. We just finished rehearsing something. And one of the men of the dancers, one of the male dancers, came to me and said, "If you see Ellen, I haven't been able to find her. If you see her, tell her I'm at the coffee shop down the street and I'd love to have her come have coffee with me. So I said, sure. So I was in the room kind of waiting and she appeared. And I said, Ellen, Gary just told me that he would really like to see you. He's down at the coffee shop down at the corner of the street. And she said, oh, thank you. And she headed down to the coffee shop. And I wasn't there. I was, I don't know where I was. I was just sort of in my own space. And a car smashed into her and killed her. And I began to believe that I had caused this, because if I hadn't told her that he was waiting for her, she would not have been crossing the street. And I had tremendous guilt about it. And so, because I was so accustomed to writing, I sat down with a pen and paper and started to talk about the experience and tell it on the paper. And I realized, oh, I didn't cause this. I just passed on a message that anybody might have passed on to anybody else. And it gave me a lot of ease and relief. I was just, my guilt was so huge. I really believed I had caused this problem.
And since we're talking about writing, you know, the terminology I use sometimes is who's the author of a story versus the characters. You were a character in that story. You were not the author of it.
Correct.
You know, you were.
I didn't realize that.
Right. You didn't realize that. And we take on authorship as if you wrote, oh, someone's going to get killed. I'm going to give them a message that causes their death, as if you know the whole story.
Right.
And you were a character saying one line, doing one thing.
And I remember when I finished it, I just began to sob.
Yeah.
And it was a release. I was just so, I mean, I was missed her so much. She was a lovely person and I really liked her. And she was one of my mates, you know, my friends. But the release of all of that guilt, it was just so heavy. And I hear so many people blaming themselves.
Right.
And I used writing as an outlet for that. And I know that you can probably do that too.
Right. Right. So let's go to some questions that people sent in.
Okay.
Let me get to them. I know we've got some live questions, but there were some that were sent in before. One moment, and I'm going to start reading them.
I remember one, if I may.
Let me just, sure, go ahead and start with that.
Somebody asked about prompts for writing.
Right.
And how do you get started? And I think one of the ways that I get started is I try to remember the last time I saw someone. And I begin there. Or I remember a story that happened with them that was funny or that was sad or whatever it was. So whatever I can think of, I just start writing it, and then it moves off into all these different kind of tributaries, and you see where you go.
My prompt that I think about that's an interesting one for people to do is, if my grief could speak, this is what it would say. If my grief could speak, this is what it would say. Or you can write about your broken heart. What does your broken heart want to say? You know, a lot of different things like that. One of the things I'm going to do that you and I had in our class together is we had a grief journal with some prompts. So I'm going to put that in the comments for anyone who wants to use it. You can take a look at that and it might give you some prompts. Let me go to Lisa's question. Lisa says, writing through the grief of losing my mom is very helpful, but sometimes bad memories will pop up during the writing process.
Yeah.
It could have been a time during my teen years that I may have caused my mom some emotional pain and heartache, or times we argued over things. During the process of remembering, I'm overcome with guilt and stop writing, even though I know that I'm getting the feelings out and will help the healing process. How do I overcome my own emotions so that I can forgive myself and honor my mom?
I don't think it's a matter of getting over the emotions. It's a matter of allowing them to be there. Right. And let the feelings come through you. And if you really don't resist, the feelings will transform, they will change. So at that moment that you pull away from the paper and you just say, oh my God, I can't face this, I can't do this, see if you can come back and just keep it going. And there's something about, I heard someone once say that if you have a pure emotion, pure without any story connected or stuff that you guilt or stuff you have on it, it'll pass through in about 90 seconds. And it'll move into something else. So it's a matter of staying with it. If you can stay. This is something that Pema Chodron always talks about. She's a Buddhist nun who was very, very learned and has written many, many books. And it's all about staying. See if you can stay with it, because it will transform. And if you pull away, you're going to have to start it all over again and get back in there again, because those feelings and thoughts are there. And they need to be acknowledged because they need to be healed.
And I'll bust an illusion. Here's the illusion. You think as you're writing this stuff, it gets painful. And you think if you stop writing, you've left the pain. And I just want to tell you it's an illusion. The pain goes with you. The pain that you are afraid of putting on the paper, when you get up from the desk, doesn't sort of stay in the air between. It gets up and goes with you. So it's helpful to me to think about, I'm putting the pain on the paper. Oh, painful on the paper. Painful on the paper.
Then when you walk away, you'll be in a different place, because you will have witnessed your own pain, as David says.
Lisa says, I hesitate to journal because seeing my thoughts on the page makes them feel real. It's hard to face the feelings. How will you suggest I ease into my fear of writing?
Well, you can make up a story if you want to, like I did about my parents. And maybe it'll be a little easier to get into it, and then it will take you where you end up wanting to go. But it's not, you just have to think of it as an opportunity and a gift that you're giving yourself, and just gently bring yourself back and bring yourself back. It's just when you meditate and your mind begins to disappear and kind of go into all kinds of different places, and then you just bring it back. And that's what you're going to do with the writing. Start out, and write about anything you want. Write about what the computer looks like, or what the keyboard looks like, and then once you get yourself moving and going, then you'll move into some other places. And just keep bringing yourself back.
And I think everything we just said is true for Lisa too, that, the reality is those feelings are real, and what happened did happen.
Yeah.
And to know if you put them on paper, it's not making them any more real than there are. Look, what's more real, your loved one being gone, or it's being on paper that they're gone? I mean, the harsh reality isn't on paper. The harsh reality is in real life.
There are times when seeing it on the page and making it real makes you feel better,
right?
Even though it feels like it's not going to. Right. But it is real, and maybe just acknowledging the reality of it and getting out of the denial of it will give you some peace.
Right. Bobby says, I was never one to keep a journal or write feelings down until my husband of 42 years passed away from dementia almost 10 months ago. I found that writing him letters soothed my broken heart. I wrote some, cried some, usually feel better afterwards. Days that I feel like I just took another grief sucker punch are the times that I write. My feeling and thoughts gain some clarity and about going forward without him. That's beautiful, Bobby.
That's just beautiful. I think I want to say it takes some courage to write. It's not an easy thing to do, but the rewards are so vast, and they help you so much that it's worth taking a risk and doing it, and just putting it on the paper and seeing what you come up with. It's really worth it, but it's a very courageous thing to do.
I also think it's fascinating. There's something magical about it. Writing is a reciprocal relationship. It's shocking to me that I can be sitting at my computer, because I'm a night writer, as Andrea knows. She's early, I'm night. is I
We
can
need
be
to know.
writing at midnight and I can sitting here in tears writing something for a book. And I'm writing about a memory with my father. And it blows me away that 5 years later, someone can email me and go, I'm in Yugoslavia and I'm reading your book. Oh, that part about your father there made me cry. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the part that made me cry made them cry. I just love that, it transcends.
Writing sometimes gives people permission. I've
Hmm.
had people tell me that a lot, that when I was particularly vulnerable, I wrote a memoir, and when I was particularly vulnerable on the page, it was hard to do, but I've had several people tell me that that gave me permission to feel my feelings, to admit the same feelings, and to put that on the page. So there's something about doing it yourself. If you haven't had an experience, other people have had it too.
Right.
And you're not like this sort of oddball that never, nobody's ever going to understand. If you were feeling hurt by something, other people were feeling hurt by it also. And it allows them the permission to do their own writing and to feel those feelings.
Eunice says, it's been 20 years since my father passed away and we never dealt with it as a family. But losing my mom 2 years ago, I saw grief differently. I want to feel connected with my father, but I feel like I have let too much time pass. Not sure if I should open this up. Can too much time pass in writing?
I don't think so. No, because I wrote about things now that I did when I was 14. So I think if you can just picture your father in any particular way that you remember him, and just start writing to that memory, and a lot of things will suddenly come up for you that will your memory will get sparked and you'll remember other things and he'll come alive again. And there are many things that went on that you can't remember right at this moment, but I think it's worth going in there and seeing what's there. You'll learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah, sometimes it's like a puzzle. You have like only two memories and you begin to write them down. And once they're there and you write them, you're like, oh, but there was a third. Oh, and there was a fourth. And we begin building.
Yeah.
The other thing is so many people have had traumatic events. And we talk about helping them come out of the traumatic event, not that the grief and trauma is over, but leaving the traumatic event. And I think sometimes an important exercise is just to write about the room you're in, write about this moment, what's going on in this moment, and to recognize in this moment, I'm safe. In this moment, there's a coffee cup here, there's a computer screen there, there's enough food in the fridge. In this moment, I am safe. There's something so profound about getting into the moment.
Again, during my memoir, I was sort of in between things, and I was sitting at the computer, and I suddenly spelled out the name of a guy that hadn't treated me very well. And I saw it on the page, and I went, oh, no, I'm not doing this. I got up, I got in my car, I drove away, and I came back, and I realized, yeah, I need to write this. I need to talk about this. And it took me, I couldn't do it that day. And I went to sleep that night. I got up in the morning, and then I said, I just need to get this out because he's still there. And it really cleared it, a lot of clarity about that now. But I remember just pushing back and going, oh, no, I'm not doing that.
Right.
But I needed to.
So one of the things I also want to share with people along those lines that you and I talk about is when you're writing, you can't think about whether this might be a blog someday or whether it might be a book someday. And maybe I should change things because I don't know that the other person would like me saying that. Start by writing just for you and say it all completely truthfully. Would you agree?
Completely, because sometimes you want to change names or something because you don't want to expose someone. But when you write your first draft, you have to write it in truth, in vulnerability, the way it actually happened. Nobody gets to see that but you. Then later, if you make decisions to make shifts and changes and you want somebody not to be recognizable, or you want, you don't want to tell a tale of what somebody did, or then you can make those decisions. But when you're first writing it, it's just what you said, David. You really need to just write it as it happened in all of its rawness.
Right.
And then you'll see what you want to do with it.
Because it gets in our way if we say, okay, I'm going to write this about my father. Oh, he wouldn't like that, so I'm not going to say that. Never mind. I'm going to write this about my mom. Oh, no, she wouldn't like that. And then you're just, so it takes us to one of the things you're brilliant at. Tell us about that person we all live with, that we all have shacked up with, whether we want to or not, called the inner critic.
Oh, my God. We have this inner critic. And it doesn't just wait till you're writing, but it's pretty active when you're writing. It's always telling you what to do. It's always saying, oh, that's good, that's bad, you should do this, you shouldn't do that. And it really doesn't know anything. It's just a voice that is probably a conglomeration of all the negative voices that have ever spoken to us in life. And we have to learn to tame it, is what I call it, because we can't get rid of it. It's there. It'll always be there. It's always around, but you can make the voice a little lower and a little less annoying. And I do this exercise with just about in all my classes and with all of my people that I work with, that they write a letter to their inner critic and say what they want to say. And you might be angry at it. You might want to be nice to it. I pictured myself kicking it in the shins one time, punching it in the face. At other times, you see it at the dinner table and say, yes, I know you're here, but I'm really not that interested in what you have to say. We have to get beyond that somehow, or tame that and quiet it in some way before we can really sit down and write anything. And you'll recognize that that critic is with you not only when you're writing or doing some sort of artistic pursuit, but you didn't do this right, you didn't handle the funeral right, you didn't call the right people, and then you've got to get in touch with that voice and just say, I hear you, but I'm really not interested. And I'm going to do this my way.
And I'll tell you, the inner critic's always going to be there. It's always going to be judging your writing. You're doing it wrong. You shouldn't be saying it. After all these decades, I use my inner critic. There are things, and anyone who's read, well, my friends know, like literally if you read the last book, Finding Meaning, and Andrea edited that with me, there are things I said in that book I had shared with no one. I didn't share it, and yet somehow I give myself permission. And I'll give you an example of that. A lot of times it's suggested in the Jewish religion, depending on however there's different forms of every religion, conservative, Orthodox, all that. And so one of the things is you do not have an open casket. And that's one of the things that many people believe in Judaism. And when my son died, it was unexpected. It was brutal. And it all felt so rushed. And I really needed to see him. I needed to see him. So I, had them open the casket for me. And I took a picture. I just felt so rushed, and I needed that moment to have that reality. And I felt so guilty about doing that. Didn't share that with anyone. And then when I was writing the book, as I'm writing, that thought came to me, and it was like, do not put that in. You were very bad. Do not put that in.
That's the inner critic talking.
That's the inner critic. And I immediately said, first of all, I'm old enough that the very things I hear, don't put that in the book. I know those are the things that are so authentic, they resonate with people.
Mm-hmm.
That people go, oh my gosh, I did that too. And thank you for sharing that. So it is sort of like sometimes I even take contrary action. Whatever the inner critic's telling me not to do,
You
I'm
do it.
doing. I'm writing about that.
I once imagined the critic. I was in a particularly difficult part of a book I was writing. The critic was going wild, you know. He was so I saw him like a judge with his robes on, with a gavel, and he was going, "Bang, that's good. Bang, that's bad." And I said, "Why don't you go into your chambers, have a brandy, and I'll call you when I need you." And I actually envisioned him getting up and walking away and going into his chambers. Of course, he looked back at me for a moment like, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, I'll call you later." It was a great little exercise I dreamed up.
Right. So let me read some of these. Gloria says, one of the things I was so scared about when my dad first died was that I would forget who he was before he was sick. So that's what I wrote about one day. All the things I didn't want to forgive. Writing as therapy has been such a beautiful tool for me.
Wow.
All right, Maggie says, and if there's any places you're stuck or you don't know how to do something, please write them down. Writing helped me come to better understand the decisions I made for him that I question later. Beth says, I just lost him suddenly less than a month ago. The pain is unbearable. He died at the bottom of our stairs. I didn't find him right away. So, you know, Beth, you have to decide, maybe that's not the moment you write about if you're just so much pain about that. Maybe the thing to do is to write a memory, not at him at the bottom of the stairs, but of him, you know, having a great time in some other moment. Sandra says, writing keeps memory alive. Linda says, can you help me with being judgmental of myself when I try to write? I say things like, this is stupid or no one cares. So if our mind says this is stupid and no one cares, what should we say?
Well, that's the inner critic going crazy on you. And you just got to tame it somehow and say, it doesn't matter if nobody cares. I'm writing this now. I'm going to run the show, not you. Right. And you let yourself just do whatever the critic is saying. Like David said, do the opposite. Just keep going. It's not going to hurt anybody for you to keep writing.
Right.
And for you to defy what that critic is telling you. And you're not alone. That every writer, every artist, everybody who's doing anything that's creative has that problem. So you're not alone in that, but you can get beyond it.
Gloria says she has a purple journal where she writes letters to her dad. It's very sweet. Casey says, I'm going to write about the journey forward and write about the love of her and my experience I have with each hospice patient. It's very sweet.
Beautiful.
Jennifer says, I've been writing about my husband's passing unexpectedly. It's been incredible, and it's been incredibly helpful. Jennifer says this also, go have a brandy. That's brilliant. She's going to use that one. So if so many people, they have that I'm stupid. So if you're sitting there and you're going, because I'll tell you, look, I've written 6 books now, but I have many journals in my closet that all start with, all right, I'm ready to write the book. And that was it. That was my journal. Maybe a paragraph. I don't know what finally clicked, but what do you say to that person who's like, I sit down and there's nothing, or I get stuck? Tell us about getting stuck in writing.
What I do when I get stuck is I write about being stuck.
Oh, tell us more about that.
I just say, maybe I'm trying to write something and it's not coming. So I say, I'm trying to write something and it's not coming and I don't understand why not. And I hate being in this place. I'm really stuck and I don't know how to get out of it. And all of a sudden you're writing. And then it'll veer off into some other direction. But just when I do class, I tell people, if you get stuck, you're starting to write something, and then you want to stop, just keep your pen moving. I don't care what you put on that paper. I don't care if you're swearing on the paper, if you're feeling sorry for yourself, if you're playing the victim, if you're hating somebody, just keep the pen moving. And eventually it will move off into something else.
Right.
So in order, if you have writer's block, you write about what it's like to have writer's block.
Right.
And that always gets me out of writer's block.
Someone says, oh, I love this. Michelle says, Andrea, I find it amusing that your inner critic is a guy. I never thought about that.
So he is.
How about that? Any questions for Andrea and I? Well, about sort of how to do it, how to start a journal. And, you know, a journal can be anything, right? It can be on your yellow pad. It can be in a beautiful journal. It can be on a piece of paper.
It can be on cocktail napkins.
Right.
Anything. Sometimes I'll be sitting somewhere and some thought will come to me and I'll see whatever is around. I usually I'm kind of old school. I carry a pen and paper with me, but we all have our phones and you can write in your phone if you don't carry anything else with you. But a thought comes and I just scratch it out and think about it. And later I may bring it up and write something about it.
I used to years ago have a pad and pen by my bed on the nightstand. Mm-hmm. And I would write things like, the sun is now moving home. And I'd wake up the next morning, I go, what? Huh? What? The sun is now moving home. And then I noticed when I was like, okay, enough with the pad and pen, I'm going to use my phone. If I dictate and I record, so if I wake up in the middle of the night or something, I'll record something like, then I'll go, when the sun sets, it actually begins a journey back towards home that's going to give birth to a new sunrise. And I can actually give the context of it instead of just the sentence that the next day I'm like, what? You know? A lot
of people can't tell their stories, and I tell them to just record them, tell them to another person and record it. And then you can transcribe that. It's an easy way to do it. And later you can transcribe it and it's all there. But some people speak more easily than they write. But you still have to tell your story. So speak it.
And I've done that. You know, there's been times my therapist would call and check in on me. And I'm like, oh, my therapist is calling. I'm going to go deep. And I turn the recorder on. I just know in a call with my grief counselor, I'm going to go deep.
And you're not going to remember some of the stuff because you went so deep.
You're right. And you're not going to remember. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see. Any questions here? Oh, a good one. This always comes up. Does it matter, computer or pen, Andrea?
Whatever you feel the most comfortable with. I like to write on my computer, but if I ever write poetry, I do it with a pen. There's something about the experience of the movement of the pen and the rhythm of it, which sometimes sparks some memories and helps you work on it. But I think that's something that's very personal and it doesn't really matter. Sometimes when people start writing, I ask them to use a pen and paper because I think it connects them to themselves a little more completely than it does when you're using something electronic. But I just do it. However you feel like doing it, just do it.
So one of the things I think is really important to think about now is when you have two big things happening. People in this group are dealing with a death while we're all experiencing a pandemic.
It's a lot.
This is a moment to write about. And I want to just talk for a moment about protecting your voice. You know, if Andrea and I could tape a conversation with Andrea and I discussing the pandemic. That would be helpful later. But the truth is, only David can write about what it's like to have a son die and then a few years later be in a pandemic. Only Andrea can write about what it's like to be in a pandemic for her. You are unique in all the world. No one has ever had the experience of your loved one dying and being isolated where you are in this moment in history. And that's your story to tell, right? That's their story to tell. This is the moment to write.
This is an historical moment we're in right now. And it would be really wonderful to write. So, I mean, we're being with ourselves in a way we never have before, perhaps. Some people are always on the move, and now we can't be. So there's valuable material here. So I encourage you to just jot it down. It doesn't matter what it sounds like. Just jot down ideas and details and little things. Like, it's the way I said to David, maybe you want to write about your son, and we'll have that when you decide you're going to do anything with it.
Because I promise, it's so true what you say about the details. They're going to get lost.
They're going to get lost, and it's going to be beautiful if you can remember them.
And what happens is, in 2 years, you're talking with someone about writing, and someone goes, well, what do you want to write about? You're going to go, oh, the pandemic. And they go, well, what would you say about it? You're going to go, I don't know, it was hard. And yet today, if you write, today I can write about, I went into the pharmacy. I saw the people behind the counter in masks. Mm-hmm. I saw the pharmacist who I've known for years and love say, why are you here? This is dangerous to be here. Oh my gosh, I'm being, what's it like to be in your local pharmacy where you know everyone? And it's dangerous. Like, what's that feel like? I wanted to shower when I got home. There's an invisible enemy out there. I'm like thinking about what?
I'm wearing gloves and I'm not allowed to touch anything. And
I'm wearing a blue glove here. This is my dirty hand. This is my clean hand. And I'm in the store like on a timer, that the longer I'm in, I can hear the ticking, the more dangerous it becomes. And then someone goes,
remember. Excuse me, Dave. These are things that you might not remember later.
I will never remember them.
That's
a woman walks down the aisle when I'm in it. She's coming towards me. There's no room. Does it, those are details I remember today. They're going to get lost like tears in the rain.
And it'll be very important for you to remember those, to talk to people who didn't live through this, to explain it. Those are the things you touch feelings that way. And when people's feelings are touched, then they remember things. Then they get what you're trying to say to them. And it's these details that allow you to tell that story and more clearly.
Right. Just the idea that you call me, you've been to Gelson's, you've been to the grocery store. And I'm like, you've been to the grocery store? Oh no, I have fear from my friend Andrea. She went to the grocery store. I mean, you'd think you told me you went to the ATM at midnight.
I was scared on my way there. I felt all this fear. I said, I've gone to the grocery store 1 million times and I felt fear. And it's really, I write a blog every week and I'm talking about all these different things.
Right. Time flies with you. Time flies as usual.
As always.
So,
never enough.
So one of the things is someone asked about our writing class. It's on hold right now. And Andrea actually has a physical class right now in LA that's on hold too.
On hold.
And, it doesn't feel like a time that I want to be selling anyone anything. So that's why I'm doing these things free. That's why we're here. These are our gifts to you. So someday all those things will be open again. And right now we're doing this so that you can grab your pen and paper and write. So Andrea, tell people how they can find you. Would love. Do you have your book? Do you have? I was good. Good.
Just have it right here.
No. I said make sure you have your book.
This is my book.
Writing and Ghostwriting with Andrea Cagan.
A friendly guide to writing and ghostwriting.
Lovely.
Ghostwriting in my life.
You can get that on Amazon, right?
Yeah, Amazon.
And tell us the website and all that.
You can see my blog on Facebook or on my website, which is andreacagan.com. And I'm on Instagram, and I do daily thoughts, or every day or every other day. And you just look my name up, and you'll be able to see it and find it. And if you want to see me on Facebook, I'll friend you. Just let me know that you were in this talk, and then you can read my blog every week if you like to. It's also on my website.
Wonderful, Andrea. Andrea, you are a gift to so many.
This is such a joy. Thank you.
I'm going to put the grief journal up there again real quick so that you can find it and use it as a gift from us. And I look forward to the day that these are words that we've written in the past.
Me too.
Stories that are all behind us. And this begins with, do you remember when? Yes.
But there are always going to be new ones.
There's always going to be new ones. I love that someone said something about, if I write, then I can go to the next chapter.
Perfect.
Right. Andrea, you're a gift to me. You're a gift to everyone here. Thank you so much. Andrea Cagan, you're just wonderful. I'm going to put your name up there for everyone to see so you'll know that and find you again. If you're new to the group, tomorrow night is going to be someone else. We're going to be probably talking tomorrow's Easter, so I'm sure we're going to have a little flavor of that in there, since many people, it's a ritual that people love. It's an important day. It's a day of remembrance. It's a day that bothers people. People are angry and grief. We're going to talk about it all. So that's all tomorrow. I'll be on at 1 p.m. So 1 p.m. Pacific, tune in. And then tomorrow night, I'll be back on again. We'll figure out whether it's 5 or 6 p.m. and let you know in the group. Next week, some amazing people are going to be joining us doing this. Paul Deniston's going to be doing a grief yoga session. We're going to have Kim Goldman on, whose brother was Ron Goldman. Many of you know her from her podcast, Confronting O.J. Simpson. So she's going to be joining us about a loved one dying when it's public, because no one was more public than her during the O.J. Simpson trial. And so she's going to be on. Jason Green, who wrote the wonderful book, Once More We Saw Stars, will be on. And all these people are giving their time because we want to make sure you are served and cared for. And in the isolation of grief, we can virtually hold each other's hands. I hope you'll share this, let people know about the group. These videos we do are always here, so if you miss them, they'll be there. You can look back on some of the amazing ones we've had. Andrea, I love you. We'll be talking.
I love you too.
You all for being here.
I want to thank you, David, for this gift that you give. It's really important. I'm so lucky to be with you.
Thank you, Andrea. I so appreciate it. All right, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Take care.